Night has fallen, and the world is quiet. The day's worries have gently melted away, and a soft hush falls over the land. Stars shimmer above like tiny lanterns in a velvet sky, guiding you to a place of rest. Take a deep, slow breath in, and as you breathe out, feel your body sink further into comfort. You are safe here, wrapped in warmth and calm, ready for a gentle journey into a land of dreams and legends. In this soothing bedtime story, we will wander beneath moonlit skies to meet two old friends from distant myths. One is a mighty hero named Hercules, strong and kind, seeking to complete his great labors. The other is Anansi the Spider, clever and playful, weaving wisdom and mischief wherever he goes. Though they come from different worlds, tonight their tales will cross and join as one. Together, Hercules and Anansi will travel through enchanted forests and starlit meadows, helping each other through challenges big and small. Their adventure will unfold slowly and peacefully, with each step bringing us deeper into relaxation. As you listen, imagine the gentle crunch of their footsteps on mossy ground, the whisper of night breeze in the trees, and the twinkle of fireflies dancing in the dark. Let the calm rhythm of their journey carry you onward until the lines between their story and your dreams begin to blur. Now snuggle in and settle down. Let your eyes grow heavy as we step into this magical twilight tale. The road is open before us, shimmering in starlight, and at its end lies a peaceful rest. Our story is about to begin. The night was cool and clear as Hercules sat by a small campfire on a wooded hillside. The flames flickered gently, painting golden light on the broad, kind face of the hero. Hercules had spent the day journeying through green hills and was tired, but it was a good kind of tired. He gazed up at the night sky sprinkled with stars and thought of the tasks that still lay ahead of him. Though he was renowned for his strength, in this quiet moment he felt humble and peaceful, just a traveler under the endless sky. The crackling of the fire and the chirr of distant crickets were the only sounds, lulling him into a calm reverie. As Hercules poked the fire softly with a stick, he heard a faint rustling in the grass nearby. Out of the shadows crept a small spider, its 8 legs moving delicately over the mossy ground. In the firelight, the spider's round body cast a tiny shadow that danced on the rocks. Hercules smiled to himself, for the creature was so small and harmless that it posed no threat to anyone as mighty as him. To his surprise, the little spider spoke in a friendly, high voice, "Good evening, traveler. Might I warm myself by your fire?" The hero blinked in amazement but remained calm. He had seen many wondrous things in his life, and a talking spider was not the strangest among them. Gently he replied, "Of course, friend. All are welcome to share this fire's warmth." Hercules cupped his large hand in invitation, and the spider scurried a bit closer, glowing amber in the fire's light. "My name is Anansi," the spider said, settling on a comfortable rock. "I wander these lands in search of stories and wisdom, and what might your name be, kind one?" Hercules chuckled softly. "I am Hercules," he answered. "Some call me Heracles in my homeland. I'm on a long journey as well, completing a series of challenges." At this, the spider's eyes, all 8 of them, gleamed with interest. He had heard whispers on the wind of a strong hero performing great deeds across the world. "Ah, Hercules the hero," Anansi said in a tone of gentle teasing admiration. "I have heard a tale or two of your bravery. Tell me, what brings you so far from any village on this calm night?" Hercules sighed, adding a small branch to the fire and watching the sparks float upwards. "I serve a king who has given me 12 difficult labors to atone for past mistakes and to protect my people," he said quietly. "I've already tamed some fearsome beasts and completed a few tasks, but many remain. Sometimes the road is lonely and the tasks seem endless. Tonight I rest my weary feet before continuing at dawn." Anansi listened thoughtfully, the firelight reflected in his dark, curious eyes. The night air was cool, and he spun a tiny silken thread to catch a bit of the fire's warmth. "I too am on a quest of sorts," Anansi offered after a moment. "In my homeland, far away under the tropical sun, our sky god has all the stories of the world. I wish to bring those stories down to the people, to spread joy and wisdom. But the sky god set me a challenge. I must prove myself by capturing 4 magical creatures that are as tricky as they are dangerous." Hercules raised his eyebrows at that. It was surprising to hear such bold ambition from one so small. "You seek to capture creatures," he repeated, intrigued. Anansi gave a tiny, good-natured laugh. "Oh yes, a swarm of angry hornets, a monstrous python, a stealthy leopard, and even a mischievous fairy. All these I must catch and deliver to the sky god. Only then will he release the treasure of stories for everyone to share." The spider's voice was light and confident, as if he were describing a pleasant afternoon's work rather than perilous tasks. Hercules nodded slowly, impressed. He knew well that strength alone could not easily corral such wild things. It would take wit and bravery in equal measure. "Your quest sounds every bit as challenging as mine, Anansi," he said kindly. "Perhaps we are 2 travelers bound for the same road. I have my strength to offer, and you have your cleverness and webs. If you would like, we could journey together for a while and help one another. The nights will feel shorter with a friend to share them." At these words, Anansi's eyes shone with gratitude and mischief. "I was hoping you'd say that," he admitted. 2 heads, or rather 1 head and 8 eyes, are better than 1. I suspect that together there is no problem we cannot solve, no beast we cannot face, gently and bravely." And so it was agreed. Hercules carefully scooped up the little spider and set him on his broad shoulder so they could speak more easily. Under the canopy of stars, the strange pair talked long into the night, sharing stories of their homes and hopes. Hercules' deep voice rumbled softly as he recounted how he had slain a monstrous hydra by the marshes and chased a wild boar down from a snowy mountain. Anansi, in turn, told funny tales of how he once tricked a boastful tiger and how he loved to spin webs not just for catching food, but for creating beautiful patterns in the moonlight. The 2 of them laughed quietly together, their chuckles mingling with the crackle of the fire. Anansi told Hercules that in his language, people often call all tales spider stories, for they know that good yarns are woven like a web. Hercules smiled at that and said he hoped to hear one of Anansi's spider stories one day. Eventually, as the embers of the campfire glowed soft and red, they fell into a companionable silence. Above, the Milky Way arched across the sky like a silver river of light. Hercules felt no longer alone, and Anansi felt confident with such a strong friend by his side. Together they gazed into the dying fire until their eyes grew heavy. One by one the stars wheeled overhead, keeping watch as hero and spider gently drifted into sleep, resting up for the journey to come. Morning light crept over the hills in a gentle haze of pink and gold. Hercules and Anansi woke with the dawn, feeling refreshed. A chorus of birds greeted the new day. After a simple breakfast of wild berries and cool water from a stream, they set off to tackle the next challenge on Hercules' list, the Nemean lion. Villagers had spoken of a great lion in the valley of Nemea that terrorized anyone who wandered too far into the woods. This lion was no ordinary creature. Its fur was said to be made of gold and impervious to any blade or arrow. As they neared the valley, the air became still and quiet, as if even the birds and insects were hiding from the fearsome beast. Hercules could sense the tension in the wind. Anansi perched on his shoulder, feeling the slight ripple of the hero's muscles tensing beneath his tunic. Despite the danger ahead, both of them remained calm and focused, moving with steady, quiet steps through the trees. Soon they came upon a dark cave entrance nestled at the base of a rocky hill. Deep scratches scored the trunks of nearby trees, and huge paw prints marked the soft earth. Hercules knelt to examine one print. It was nearly the size of a shield. He glanced up at Anansi and whispered, "Our lion must be close." As if in answer, a low rumbling growl emanated from within the cave, echoing out into the morning air. Hercules stood up straight, his heart steady and his resolve firm. In a gentle voice he said, "Stay behind me, little friend. I will draw the lion out." Anansi, ever curious and brave, spun a single thread of web from a branch to his own body, ready to help in whatever small way he could. The hero stepped toward the cave and called out, "Come forth, great lion." His voice was strong yet reassuring, with no anger in it, only the courage of one who must do what is necessary. For a moment there was silence. Then, with a mighty roar, the lion of Nemea bounded out of the darkness. It was a magnificent creature, larger than any lion Hercules had seen, with a coat that glinted like molten gold in the morning sun. Its eyes were fierce and yellow, and its fangs gleamed sharp as daggers. The lion's roar rolled across the valley like distant thunder, but Hercules stood his ground calmly. Behind him, Anansi watched intently, every one of his tiny hairs alert. With a swift motion, Hercules notched an arrow to his bow and let it fly at the charging beast, hoping to wound it just enough to slow it down. The arrow struck the lion's side and snapped in two as if it had hit solid rock, falling uselessly to the ground. The lion did not even flinch. Hercules realized the stories were true. No weapon could pierce this creature's golden hide. The beast prowled closer, its tail lashing and its breath huffing in angry puffs. Hercules cast aside his bow and drew his short sword, but he knew that steel too would fail. Instead of fear, a kind of calm determination settled over him. He took a deep breath, remembering the soothing night before, and let the sword drop softly to the grass. He would have to rely on his wits and strength alone. The lion lunged, powerful muscles rippling under shimmering fur. Hercules waited until the last moment, then sidestepped gracefully, avoiding the lion's slashing claws by a hair's breadth. The beast spun around with surprising agility, and the two circled each other slowly on the forest floor. Leaves and dust swirled around their feet. Hercules's bare hands were curled into fists, but he kept them low and loose, ready to grab hold of the lion at the right moment. His steady brown eyes locked with the lion's wild golden gaze. "Easy now," Hercules murmured, almost in a whisper, as if calming a frightened horse. The lion snarled and pounced again, mighty paws outstretched. This time, Hercules met the lion head-on. With a quiet grunt of effort, he caught the creature mid-leap, wrapping his strong arms around its neck. Both man and beast tumbled to the ground, wrestling amid the ferns and moss. The lion roared in fury, thrashing and trying to claw at Hercules, but the hero held on with unyielding but compassionate strength. They rolled against the trunk of an oak tree, snapping a few branches, then onto the grass again. Birds burst from the nearby bushes, startled into flight, but soon the forest fell back into hush, broken only by the muffled sounds of their struggle. Anansi climbed a tree swiftly to get a better view and perhaps lend a hand. With quick skill, the spider cast a strand of silk from one tree branch to another right across the lion's path. At the next moment, the lion reared back, trying to shake Hercules off, and its massive head got entangled in the unexpected web. The sticky silk clung to the lion's whiskers and mane, causing the beast a moment of confusion. It was only a thin strand, but it distracted the lion just enough. Seizing that chance, Hercules gently but firmly shifted his grip to the lion's foreleg and back. With one powerful yet careful heave, he flipped the great lion onto its side. The creature hit the soft earth with a thud and a surprised grunt. Before it could twist away, Hercules pinned it down, using his full weight to still the beast's violent struggles. He pressed its shoulders to the ground, mindful not to harm it more than necessary. The lion snarled and kicked, but after a few moments it began to tire. Hercules' arms bulged with effort as the lion strained one last time. Finally, the mighty lion let out a heavy breath and fell quiet and still, its muscles giving up the fight. For a long moment, Hercules remained atop the lion, making sure it was truly subdued. His own breathing was deep and steady, and sweat beaded on his brow. "It is done," he said softly. The golden lion, exhausted, closed its eyes. In that silence, sunlight filtered gently through the trees, illuminating the clearing where man and beast lay in a tableau as still as a statue. Hercules slowly stood up, his shadow falling across the fallen lion. Anansi descended from the tree branch, landing lightly on Hercules' shoulder once more. The spider peered at the unmoving lion and asked quietly, "Is it?" Hercules nodded, catching his breath. "The lion will trouble this valley no more." He ran a hand with reverence over the creature's golden fur, which was warm and shimmering in the light. In his heart, Hercules felt respect for the lion's strength and spirit. "Thank you, brave lion," he whispered, as if to honor the creature's courage, even in defeat. Anansi observed this gesture and felt a swell of admiration for Hercules. Even after such a fierce contest, the hero showed kindness and respect. The valley, which had been tense with fear, now felt peaceful and safe. Birds cautiously began to chirp again in the branches. A gentle breeze sighed through the grass, carrying away any remnants of anger or fear. Hercules and Anansi took a moment to rest under the shade of the oak. The mighty hero's chest rose and fell as he calmed his breathing, and Anansi patted his shoulder with two of his tiny legs as if to say, "Well done." They had worked together in their own small ways to overcome the first trial of the day, blending strength and cleverness as naturally as day blends to night. After a short rest, Hercules and Anansi continued their travels. The next task was of a gentler kind, to capture the elusive Ceryneian hind, a sacred golden-antlered deer. Unlike the ferocious lion, this deer was peaceful and swift, protected by the goddess of the hunt herself. Hercules explained to Anansi that he had to catch the hind without harming it, for it was beloved by Artemis. Anansi's eyes widened at the thought of such a graceful creature. He could imagine the hind darting through the trees, as quick as a beam of moonlight. They set out through rolling woods and sun-dappled glades, following the delicate hoof-prints that the hind left in the soft earth. Day after day, Hercules and Anansi tracked the hind with patience and care. Each morning at first light, they would find fresh tracks winding through the dew-covered grass, or a flash of white tail disappearing among the leaves. Each day the hind led them deeper into enchanted forests and over gentle hills. The chase was never a frantic one, but rather a calm, enduring pursuit. Hercules moved quietly, careful not to startle the shy deer, and Anansi often scurried ahead on nearly invisible threads of silk between branches, acting as an extra pair of eyes. Sometimes, when the afternoon sun was warm, they would catch a glimpse of the hind drinking from a clear stream in a valley. Its coat was a rich chestnut, and its antlers shone as if dipped in the sunset. At those moments Hercules would stop and simply admire the creature from afar, heartened to see it safe and unharmed, even as he knew he must eventually catch it. Summer turned to autumn, and the trees glowed gold and red around them. Still, Hercules did not give up, and Anansi admired his dedication. In the evenings they rested under ancient oaks, listening to the hind's distant calls echo through twilight. The forest seemed to acknowledge their gentle intent, and small woodland animals grew used to their presence. Rabbits and foxes would sometimes creep near their camp at night, and Anansi, being a creature of nature himself, would greet them in his tiny voice. He even asked a wise old owl for advice on where the hind might roam. The owl hooted softly and told the spider and the hero of a quiet grove at the forest's heart where the deer liked to sleep under the full moon. Taking this hint, Hercules and Anansi planned their approach carefully. On a calm, starry night, when a silver moon hung low over the pines, they finally found the golden-antlered hind dozing in a meadow of soft clover. The deer's flanks rose and fell in a slow, peaceful rhythm as it slept, its breath misting gently in the cool night air. Hercules' heart pounded softly with excitement and concern. He knew he must be very gentle and swift. At his request, Anansi had woven a strong but silky net from vines and webbing, just large enough to cradle the deer without harm. With the net in his hands, Hercules stepped forward as quietly as a shadow. Each footstep was placed with care so as not to snap a twig or rustle a leaf. Anansi watched from a nearby branch, holding his own breath in anticipation. The moonlight illuminated the clearing, bathing it in pale glow. When Hercules was close enough to hear the hind's slow breathing, he paused. Even in that tense moment, he marveled at the beauty of the creature lying before him, its golden antlers catching the moon's glow, its slender legs tucked beneath its body, and long eyelashes resting against its cheeks. Saying a silent prayer to Artemis for forgiveness in borrowing her sacred animal, Hercules gently unfurled the silken net. In one smooth motion, swift as a whisper, he cast the net over the sleeping hind and stepped forward to secure it. The hind awoke with a start, eyes wide and body tensing to leap. It scrambled to its feet, but the net held snug around its form like a soft, enveloping blanket. Hercules quickly but tenderly wrapped his arms around the deer's middle, speaking in a low, soothing voice. "Easy, easy now. You're all right, little one." The hind struggled briefly, but Hercules' touch was calm and reassuring, not hurting it. Anansi skittered down from the tree and approached carefully. He began to hum a quiet, lullaby-like tune, a little melody from his homeland, which seemed to have a magical, calming effect. The deer's ears twitched at the gentle sound of the spider's humming, and its wild breathing began to slow. Soon the hind realized that these strangers meant it no harm. It stood still, trembling only slightly, as Hercules stroked its neck softly through the net. Under the glowing moon and the shimmering stars, a sense of serenity filled the grove. "Thank you, noble hind," Hercules whispered, relief and gratitude evident in his voice. The deer blinked its large, dark eyes as if in understanding. Hercules promised in a respectful tone, "I will let you go free as soon as I've shown you to the king who set this task. You will not be harmed." Anansi added softly, "We're sorry to disturb your rest, dear one." At that, the hind bobbed its head ever so slightly, as if acknowledging their strange kindness. With the hind safely captured but uninjured, the two friends gently led the creature out of the meadow. The forest seemed to part for them as they walked slowly, Hercules guiding the hind with a light hand, and Anansi scurrying alongside, still humming his lullaby. The golden antlers glinted with each movement like two crescent moons dancing through the trees. In time, they would present the beautiful hind to King Eurystheus as proof of Hercules' labor, and true to Hercules' word, the deer would then be released back into Artemis's care, free to roam these woods again. But for now, hero, spider, and hind moved as one quiet procession under the night sky. After delivering the hind unharmed to fulfill the task, Hercules felt a great weight lifted from his heart. This labor had tested not his strength but his patience and compassion. Anansi was beaming, as much as a spider can beam, with pride for his friend. "You see," Anansi said as they watched the hind disappear gracefully back into the forest, "sometimes gentleness is its own kind of strength." Hercules nodded, smiling softly. The moonlight caught in his kind eyes. "I could not agree more," he replied. They bid the lovely creature farewell, watching as it vanished like a ghost among the silvered trees. The nighttime forest was once again still, save for the distant hoot of the wise owl and the chorus of crickets serenading the heroes onward. With the gentle hind returned safely, Hercules and Anansi journeyed on to tackle a very different kind of task. This next challenge was not about fighting a monster or chasing a swift creature, but about accomplishing an apparently impossible chore, cleaning the Augean stables. King Augeas had a vast number of cattle, and their stables had not been cleaned in decades, so long that the filth formed hills and the smell could be noticed from miles away. When Hercules and Anansi arrived at the pasture land by the river, they were greeted with an overpowering sight and smell of the massive stables packed with dirty straw and dust. Hercules crinkled his nose, but couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it. "Cleaning all this by hand would take years," he said wryly. Indeed, even for a strong man like Hercules, shoveling out those endless stalls in a single day, as the king demanded, seemed utterly hopeless. Anansi climbed onto Hercules' shoulder and surveyed the scene. "Goodness me," the spider said, pretending to gag humorously. "I think even the flies have fled this place." Hercules laughed, covering his mouth politely. Humor aside, he knew he needed a clever solution. He walked around the back of the stables, thinking hard, with Anansi scuttling along the ground beside him. That's when the little spider noticed the glint of sunlight on flowing water nearby. A broad, sparkling river meandered through the fields not far from the barns. Anansi's 8 eyes lit up. "Hercules," he piped up excitedly, "do you see what I see?" The hero followed the spider's gaze to the river, and slowly a grin spread across his face. The river, of course. Together, they hatched a plan as refreshing as the river itself. Hercules would use his strength to alter the course of the river, and Anansi would guide the water through the stables using his webs as makeshift channels. Without delay, Hercules swung into action. He found large stones and fallen tree trunks along the riverbank, and with Anansi directing, he began to build a new path for the water. The hero dug 2 wide trenches leading into and out of the back of the enormous stable building. The ground was hard, but Hercules' powerful hands and a sturdy branch as a spade did the trick, all while he hummed a working tune under his breath. Anansi darted around, weaving strong silken strands along the trench walls to reinforce them and ensure the water would flow exactly where it was needed. The morning sun climbed higher as they worked, and soon both man and spider were speckled with dirt, but smiling at each other in anticipation of their clever solution. When all was ready, Hercules gave a final push to breach the riverbank. With a roaring rush, cool, clear water surged into the first trench. Anansi cheered as the stream raced toward the stable. The water gushed into the filthy building, and what a commotion arose. Years of caked mud, old straw and grime were lifted and carried away as the river flowed straight through the stables like a cleansing flood. Hercules quickly moved to the far side of the stables and knocked out a section of the wall he had weakened, allowing the improvised river channel to exit. Out poured the water in a torrent, along with all the dirt and refuse which washed out to the fields beyond. Inside the stables, cows mooed in surprise at the sudden shower, but they were soon left standing on fresh, wet, clean floor rather than muck. It all happened so fast that the cattle simply looked around in mild confusion, then settled down with contented snorts, as if grateful for the unexpected bath and the now spotless stalls. For a few hours, the river continued to sweep through until every last corner of the stable was rinsed clean. Hercules then removed the temporary barriers, allowing the river to return to its natural course. The midday sun dried the stable yard, and an earthy, wholesome scent of wet hay and clean clay filled the air, replacing the earlier stench. Hercules and Anansi surveyed their work with pride. Where once there had been filth beyond measure, now the vast stables were gleaming and sweet-smelling. Sunlight streamed through the wide doorways and reflected off puddles of clear water on the smooth stone floors. King Augeas himself came to see, and his jaw dropped in astonishment. "Why, the stables are spotless!" he exclaimed. He had set this labor thinking it impossible to complete in a single day, yet here were Hercules and his strange little companion, job done by noon and leaning against a fence, enjoying a cool drink from the very river that did the cleaning. Augeas tried to offer Hercules a reward for this miraculous cleaning, but Hercules politely declined, content with the satisfaction of a challenge met and a lesson learned. As they departed, Anansi remarked merrily, "I do believe that was the largest wash I've ever helped hang out to dry." Hercules threw back his head and laughed, the deep sound echoing across the shining river. "It certainly was an unforgettable spring cleaning," he agreed. The animals in the fields watched their two departing benefactors, a giant of a man and a tiny spider, with what seemed like grateful appreciation. A few oxen even bowed their great heads as if in thanks. The land felt renewed, and Hercules had shown that sometimes brains and teamwork accomplish what brute force alone cannot. With the stables cleansed and another labor complete, the friends continued on their way, leaving behind green pastures, clear waters, and a story of ingenuity that locals would tell for years to come. By now, Hercules had completed many of his labors, and word of his deeds had spread across the lands. Together, he and Anansi had overcome challenges through strength, heart, and wit. The Nemean lion was defeated, the sacred hind gently captured and released, the stables cleansed in a single day. There remained only a few final trials, the most distant and demanding of all. "The last of my labors will take me far beyond the horizon," Hercules said one evening as they camped by a quiet roadside, the sky streaked with the purples and oranges of sunset. Anansi sat on a rock by the fire, nodding thoughtfully. He knew that Hercules would soon need to travel to the very edge of the known world to retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides, and beyond that lay a journey into the underworld itself. The little spider also remembered his own quest. He still needed to capture the hornets, the python, the leopard, and the fairy for the sky god. He had helped Hercules all this way, and now, as fate would have it, the path to Hercules' remaining labours ran through the very regions where Anansi's elusive creatures could be found. It seemed the two friends' destinies were truly woven together like a web. So, with the first light of dawn, they set out on their longest journey yet. They crossed towering mountains where the peaks touched the clouds, then sailed over a great sea that sparkled by day and rocked them to sleep by night. Hercules would steer their small boat under the constellations, his massive hands gentle on the oars, while Anansi told soft stories to pass the time, his voice mingling with the hush of the waves. When they reached distant shores, they trekked through golden deserts under the patient sun, and later through lush rainforests alive with the whisper of leaves and the distant calls of exotic birds. Each new landscape was more wondrous than the last, and through it all Hercules and Anansi walked side by side, sharing smiles and quiet determination. One hot afternoon, as they wandered beneath a canopy of enormous trees in a faraway jungle, a sudden angry buzzing filled the air. The sound grew louder, resonating like a rising chorus. Hercules recognized the noise at once, a swarm of insects, and a large one at that. "Hornets," Anansi whispered, tilting his head to listen. Sure enough, they soon spotted a massive hornet nest hanging from a low branch of an ancient fig tree, and around it swirled a dark cloud of Moboro, the deadly hornets Anansi had been tasked to catch. The hornets were as big as Hercules's thumb, with iridescent wings catching the dapples of sunlight and stingers that glinted like tiny needles. If provoked, the swarm could be very dangerous. Dozens of angry hornets could overwhelm even a hero, but Anansi's lips curved into a calm smile. "This one is my task to handle," he said quietly to Hercules. "Watch and see." Hercules stayed a safe distance back, standing serene and ready in case things went awry, but trusting Anansi's plan. The clever spider scuttled over to a broad banana leaf nearby and carefully bit through its stem, fashioning the leaf into a makeshift umbrella above his head. Next, he retrieved an empty, hollow gourd they had picked up along their travels, a perfect little vessel with a narrow neck. With a few deft movements, Anansi used his front legs to bore a small hole in the gourd's base, creating a spout, which he plugged for the moment with a pebble. Hercules watched with quiet fascination as Anansi then carried the gourd to a small stream trickling through the jungle undergrowth. The spider's silk thread was surprisingly strong. He looped it around the gourd and lowered it into a pool until it filled with cool water, then dragged the heavy, water-laden gourd back toward the hornet nest. All the while the hornets buzzed about their grey, papery home, unaware of the spider's intentions. When everything was ready, Anansi took a deep breath and crept toward the tree. He held the big banana leaf over himself like a tiny umbrella and deliberately poured some water from the gourd over his head and body until he was soaked. Then, with a flick of his back leg, he cast the first droplets of water up toward the nest. A few fat drops splattered against the nest's side. Instantly the hum of the hornets changed pitch. They were confused and thought the rains had come. Before they could figure things out, Anansi scurried right below the nest, still dripping wet, and called out in a high, concerned voice, "Oh, friends, have you not heard? The heavy rains are coming. Quick, quick, take shelter in this dry gourd before the storm catches you." As he said this, he held up the hollowed gourd invitingly. Now, hornets hate rain more than anything. It mats their wings and drives them from the sky. At Anansi's words and the water sprinkling their nest, the swarm panicked. Trusting the spider's urgent warning, for he sounded quite convincing, the hornets poured out of their nest in a frenzy to escape the imaginary downpour. One after another, the striped insects dove straight into the narrow mouth of the gourd to seek the dryness within. In a matter of seconds, nearly the entire swarm had rushed inside, crowding together in the darkness of the gourd and thankful to have found shelter. "That's right, all in, cozy and dry," Anansi murmured encouragingly. When the last straggling hornet had squeezed through the opening, Anansi swiftly plugged the hole in the gourd's bottom with the pebble and sealed the top with a web. The hornets realized too late that they had been tricked. Their buzzing inside the gourd grew loud and confused, but none could escape the sealed container. "Got you!" Anansi whispered gleefully. He tied several strong strands of silk around the gourd for good measure. From behind a nearby fern, Hercules stepped out, grinning in amazement and admiration. "Marvelously done, Anansi," he said, keeping his voice low so as not to agitate the captured insects further. The spider bowed playfully. "One down," he chimed softly, echoing words he had uttered once before on his solo quest. Hercules gently picked up the secured gourd, and the friends moved on quietly, leaving the jungle peaceful except for the distant calls of birds. The hornets, safely trapped, would be delivered to the sky god in due time, but for now there were more challenges ahead. As dusk settled over the rainforest, painting the sky in hues of lavender and indigo, Hercules and Anansi found themselves by the bank of a slow-moving river. Fireflies began to blink above the water like wandering stars. On the far side of the river, partly submerged in the reeds, they spotted the enormous, scaly form of a great serpent, Onini the python. The moon had just risen, and its silver light revealed the snake's thick, muscular body coiled lazily, half in the water and half on land. Onini's skin was patterned in dark diamonds and glossy with moisture. He was known to be exceedingly proud of his length and strength. Hercules and Anansi exchanged a glance. They both recognized that this impressive creature was next on Anansi's list. The python's golden eyes were open, and he watched the fireflies dance with a slow, regal blink, unaware of the two friends observing him from across the river. Hercules began to step forward, instinctively ready to grapple with the serpent if it attacked. But Anansi touched his arm lightly. "Allow me to take the lead here," the spider whispered. "A battle with this fellow would be fierce. Let's see if flattery and a bit of trickery might do instead." The hero nodded and stayed hidden among the broad leaves of a banana tree, ready to assist if needed, while Anansi boldly skittered across a fallen log bridging the river. When the spider was close enough to be heard, he called out in a polite, cheerful voice, "Good evening, mighty Onini. What a fine, splendid night by the river, is it not?" The great python turned his head in surprise, searching for the source of the tiny voice. His gaze soon fell upon little Anansi, perched on a rock by the water's edge. The snake's tongue flickered out, tasting the air curiously. "Who greets me?" Onini hissed softly, his voice carrying a subtle pride. "I am Anansi, a traveler," replied the spider amiably. "I have journeyed far and heard tales of a truly magnificent python in these parts, one whose length is greater than any creature alive." "Could that be you, sir?" At this, the python raised his head slightly higher, pleased. "Indeed, I am Onini, and no creature in the world is longer or more grand than I," he declared, scales glinting as he moved. Anansi clapped his tiny hands, or rather front legs, together in apparent admiration. "Oh, how fortunate I am to meet you," he exclaimed. "What a marvel you are. In fact, just today I was having a friendly debate with someone about just how long the great Onini might be. I insisted you must be the longest being in the land, longer even than the river bamboo that grows nearby. But you know, my friend doubted and said, 'Surely even Onini cannot be as long as the longest stick in the forest.' I would love to prove them wrong and satisfy our curiosity. Would you grant me the honor of measuring your splendid length?" The python's eyes shone with vanity and interest. He slithered forward out of the reeds, revealing more and more of his astounding body. "Compare me to a mere stick," he said, sounding offended and eager all at once. "Very well, little one. Find the longest bamboo stalk you can, and I will show you that I exceed it without question." Anansi had prepared for this. Nearby lay a sturdy, straight log that Hercules had quietly cut and trimmed while Anansi was speaking, for the hero guessed the spider's plan. It was a very long, thick branch from a fallen tree, certainly longer than any common bamboo, but whether it was longer than Onini remained to be seen. With Hercules still concealed in the foliage, Anansi dragged one end of the long stick with surprising strength. Perhaps Hercules gave it a subtle nudge from behind, but the python didn't notice. He placed it on the ground before Onini. "Here we are," he said. "This is the longest piece of wood I could find. Do you think you could stretch out straight beside it so we may measure, Great One?" Onini, puffed up with confidence, uncoiled fully and lined himself up next to the fallen log. He stretched and stretched, extending his sinuous body along the length of the wood. The python was truly immense. He reached from one end of the log to the other, and it looked as though he might even be a bit longer. However, each time Onini stretched his head forward, his tail would curl up a little, and when he straightened his tail, his head would shift. He was having difficulty staying perfectly straight. "Hold still just a moment, sir," Anansi said thoughtfully. "It's hard to mark your length when you curve at the ends. Perhaps if I secure you in place, just to help you keep straight?" Before Onini could object, Anansi was already at work. Quick as lightning, he spun strong web cords around Onini's tail, lashing it gently to the end of the log. The python's eyes widened in surprise. "What are you doing, little spider?" he demanded, but Anansi's tone remained innocent and reassuring. "Just making sure we measure correctly, Onini. You keep curling up, see? There, now your tail is fixed. Now let me get the middle, and now the front." With remarkable speed and agility, Anansi wove silken strands over the python, binding sections of his body to the log securely. Onini began to wriggle as he realized he was being tied, but by then it was too late. Each coil of struggle only ensnared him further in the sticky web. Hercules stepped out of hiding to lend a hand, firmly but carefully pressing the python's powerful head down against the wood so Anansi could loop a final strand around it. In a matter of moments, the great snake was trussed up like a ribbon on a maypole. Onini hissed in outrage, but Anansi leaned in front of the python's face and gave a polite bow. "Forgive me, Onini, but I must deliver you for a higher purpose. You'll be released unharmed soon enough," he said. The python could only blink and flick his tongue in frustrated acceptance. "Two down," Anansi said cheerily to Hercules, echoing his earlier triumphant count. Hercules chuckled and lifted the long log with the bound python gently, setting it among the trees where the snake would remain secure until they were ready to claim him for the sky god. "Your clever tongue is as strong as my arms, friend," Hercules said admiringly. Anansi wiggled with pride at the compliment. The night had fully fallen by the time this task was done. Crickets serenaded them from the underbrush as Hercules and Anansi washed their hands and legs in the river and prepared to rest. They left Onini safely tied and dozing in the moonlight, and withdrew a short distance to make a small camp. They lit no fire that night, content with the warm breeze and the glow of the stars overhead. Hercules lay on his back, gazing up at the constellations and feeling grateful. Anansi dangled from a silk thread above, gently swaying like a little lantern. They had captured the hornets and the python with minimal fuss, and tomorrow would bring new adventures. 2 down, 2 to go, murmured Hercules softly, thinking of the leopard and the fairy still left for Anansi, and the golden apples still left for him. And no doubt we will manage those as well, Anansi replied sleepily from where he hung. In the distance the river gurgled a lullaby, and somewhere deeper in the jungle a night bird cooed. Both hero and spider drifted into a contented sleep, confident in their partnership and the success that lay ahead. The following day found Hercules and Anansi trekking across a savanna at the forest's edge. The grasses whispered around them in the early morning light. Anansi knew that Osebo the leopard, the stealthy spear-toothed cat he needed to capture, prowled these parts. They prepared a clever trap the night before. Hercules had helped dig a deep pit along a game trail, and Anansi covered it with woven palm leaves and grass, disguising it perfectly. Now they returned to see if the trap had done its work. As the sun rose, a sudden furious growling echoed ahead. Peering through the tall grass, they saw that their pit had indeed caught its quarry. A beautiful but angry leopard paced at the bottom of the hole, its golden eyes blazing and its tail lashing. Osebo had been stalking in the pre-dawn darkness, not suspecting a thing until the ground gave way beneath him. Now he was trapped, unharmed but thoroughly stuck. Hercules and Anansi approached carefully. When the leopard spotted them above, he snarled, baring teeth as sharp as spears. He tried to leap, but the pit was too deep. With calm efficiency, Anansi began to spin his web down the sides of the pit. Hercules distracted the leopard by calling softly, "Easy, proud hunter, we mean you no lasting harm." The leopard, confused by the gentle tone, paused just long enough. Anansi's silken strands fell in a sticky net over Osebo, tangling around his sleek body. Hercules then lowered a sturdy branch into the pit and leapt down with astonishing grace. The leopard roared, but Hercules quickly wrapped the webbing securely around the cat, effectively pinning its legs. With one mighty but careful arm, Hercules scooped up the bundled leopard and climbed out of the pit. Osebo, swaddled like an enormous striped kitten, let out a final growl of protest, but found he could not break the spider's bindings. Anansi hopped onto the leopard's head and gave a polite nod. 3 down, he chimed softly, patting Osebo's fur. The leopard huffed in indignation but was otherwise unharmed, just immobilized. Hercules set the captive cat gently on the grass. "You've caught yourself quite a cat," he joked quietly. The two friends shared a grin. Anansi was overjoyed. Only one creature remained on his list now. They released the leopard into a sturdy makeshift cage of vines for safekeeping until it was time to deliver him to Niame. The morning breeze rippled through the tall grass as Hercules and Anansi took a moment to breathe. The hardest parts of their quests were nearly complete. Anansi's heart swelled with anticipation. Soon he would have all the stories to bring to humanity. Hercules placed a hand over his own chest, feeling the steady beat of hope and determination. Just one more capture for Anansi, and one more great labor for Hercules remained. That afternoon, as they entered a wood filled with ancient gnarled trees, Anansi announced that it was time to catch the final prize, Moatia, the mischievous fairy. This sprite was said to be invisible at will and clever in magic, a being even trickier than Anansi himself. But Anansi had a plan for her too. They found a tranquil clearing beneath a great silk cotton tree. Sunbeams danced through the leaves, and the air smelled sweet with wildflowers. "This spot is perfect," Anansi whispered. He gathered some sticky sap from a nearby pine and moulded a small doll from clay, coating it thoroughly with the sap. The doll was just the size of a little fairy. Hercules fetched a bowl of mashed yams, a treat nearly no fairy could resist according to Anansi, and placed it in the doll's tiny lap. Once their trap was set, Hercules and Anansi hid behind a thicket and waited in silence. The forest was so still they could hear their own slow breathing. Before long, a faint humming song drifted through the air. The fairy was approaching, drawn by the delicious aroma of yams. A shimmer of light flickered near the doll, and then the outline of a petite winged figure appeared. The fairy had materialized, sniffing the air curiously. "Ooh, what have we here?" she said in a tinkling voice. She saw the doll holding the bowl of yams and fluttered down to the ground, eyeing the food greedily. "Hello there, little girl," the fairy cooed to the doll, not realizing it wasn't alive. "May I have some of those yams? They smell simply wonderful." The doll, of course, said nothing, only smiling vacantly as dolls do. Offended by the lack of response, the fairy stamped her foot. "You rude little thing! Didn't your parents teach you manners? When a fairy asks for yams, you answer." Still no reply. The fairy's temper flared. She was known to be quite ill-tempered. "Fine, if you won't share, I'll teach you a lesson," she huffed. In a flash, the fairy raised her tiny hand and slapped the doll's cheek, only to find her hand stuck fast in the pine sap coating. What? Let go!" she squeaked, tugging, but the more she pulled, the more firmly her hand adhered. Furious now, she smacked the doll with her other hand, which immediately stuck as well. "Unhand me this instant!" the fairy shrilled, kicking at the doll. Predictably, her small bare foot became glued to the sap. It wasn't long before the fairy was completely stuck to the doll, thrashing and squealing in outrage. At that moment, Hercules and Anansi stepped calmly into the clearing. Anansi had a broad grin on his face. "Good afternoon, Moatia," he said brightly. "I see you enjoyed the yams." The fairy stopped struggling and stared daggers at the spider and the tall man beside him. "You tricked me," she accused, cheeks flushing red with embarrassment. Hercules bent down to carefully pry the sticky doll and attached fairy from the ground. The fairy was quite firmly glued and could not escape Hercules' gentle but secure grasp. Anansi climbed up and looked the fairy in the eye. "My apologies, dear fairy," he said, not sounding sorry at all, "but I'm afraid I need you as the final part of a bargain. Don't worry, we'll set you free soon, once a certain sky god has seen you." The fairy pouted and crossed her tiny arms as best she could while stuck. She realized resistance was futile, but she wasn't about to make things easy. Hercules, who always tried kindness first, spoke in a low, soothing tone. "Moatia, we truly don't wish to hurt you. In fact, perhaps you can help us. If you tell us the safest path to the garden of the Hesperides, the secret garden of golden apples, it would spare us much wandering. In return, I promise we will not harm you and will release you as soon as we are able." The fairy's pointed ears perked up at that. She did know the way to the hidden garden, and being a trickster herself, She respected an honest plea when she heard it. "Very well," she muttered, glaring at Anansi. "I will guide you, but only because I tire of that sky god's games. Follow the evening wind through the 2 mountain peaks, and you'll find a veil of mist. Beyond that veil lies the orchard you seek. Now get this goo off me." With the directions obtained, Anansi nodded gratefully. "Thank you, little one," he said. He gently pulled away bits of the sticky sap, freeing the fairy's limbs one by one, but before she could zip away, Hercules caught her softly in his cupped hands. "Forgive us, but we must keep you just a while longer until our quest is done," he said. Moatia stuck out her tiny tongue in annoyance but did not fight further. Anansi wrapped a silken strand around the fairy like a miniature shawl, securing her without hurting her, and placed the grumbling sprite in a small wicker basket they carried. 4 down. Anansi sighed with deep satisfaction. Hercules smiled broadly. Anansi had accomplished all that was required. The hornets, the python, the leopard, and the fairy were captured. Now the sky god's reward of stories was within reach. As twilight fell on the following day, Hercules and Anansi followed the fairy's directions. They came upon 2 jagged mountain peaks with a narrow pass between them. A gentle evening wind whispered through the gap, and they followed its cool, guiding breeze. Beyond the pass, a curtain of silvery mist shimmered in the dimming light. Taking a steady breath, Hercules stepped through the veil with Anansi on his shoulder, and together they emerged into a place of breathtaking enchantment. They found themselves in the garden of the Hesperides, Hera's secret orchard at the edge of the world. The sky above was painted with the deep blue of early night, and 1,000,000 stars were just beginning to glint. In the center of the garden stood an ancient apple tree with leaves of glossy green and bark that seemed to glow faintly with divine light. Hanging among the foliage were the famed golden apples, 3 of them, large and radiant, each one shining like a miniature full moon or a piece of captured sunset. The entire grove was bathed in a tranquil hush. Nearby, a clear pool reflected the twilight sky, and white lilies floated upon it. It felt as if even time stepped softly here. But Hercules and Anansi were not alone. Coiled around the great trunk of the tree was a dragon with scales of emerald and gold. This was Ladon, the eternal dragon who guarded the golden apples, never sleeping, or so the legend said. Yet, as our heroes observed the creature, they noticed its eyes were currently closed. The dragon's breathing was slow and deep, a low rumble like distant thunder with each exhale. By fortune or the grace of the gods, Ladon was at rest this night, lulled perhaps by the perfect peace of the garden. Hercules motioned for silence and tread carefully over the soft grass. Anansi, perched on his shoulder, watched the dragon intently with all 8 eyes. As they neared the sacred tree, one of Ladon's eyelids twitched. The beast was not fully asleep, and it began to stir, sensing an unfamiliar presence. The dragon's tail, which was wound around the tree's roots, uncoiled slightly, and a single eye, as luminous and yellow as a harvest moon, cracked open. Hercules froze in place, muscles tense but heart calm. He knew he must not fight this guardian if it could be helped. A battle would shatter the serenity of this place and perhaps ruin the precious apples. At that critical moment, Anansi decided to do what he did best, tell a story. In a voice as soft as a lullaby, the spider began to speak, weaving words in the language of poetry and night. He spun a gentle tale about the very stars above, how they were once silver seeds scattered by a kindly sky goddess, and how each star had a story of its own. His tone was melodious and soothing, rising and falling like a quiet breeze. The magic of Anansi's storytelling filled the garden, and even the leaves of the apple tree seemed to sigh in contentment. Ladon's half-open eye slowly shut again. The dragon, enchanted by the calm, rhythmic voice, settled its head back down against the mossy ground. Hercules could feel the tension ease from the creature as it drifted back into a deep, dreamless slumber. A hint of a smile touched Hercules' lips. The power of a good story could indeed tame even the fiercest of guardians without a single blow. Under the spell of Anansi's gentle words, the garden felt safer than ever. Quietly, Hercules approached the tree. The golden apples glowed invitingly within reach. He reached up and carefully plucked one apple, then another, and a third, cradling them in the fold of his tunic. They were surprisingly heavy, warm to the touch, and their fragrance was sweet, with notes of honey and sunshine. Hercules glanced over at the dragon to ensure it was still asleep. Ladon did not stir. Anansi finished the last lines of his starry tale in a whisper and hopped down to examine the famous fruit up close. "Magnificent," he breathed, admiring how the apples shone even in the dim light. Task complete, Hercules gave a respectful bow toward the tree and the sleeping dragon, silently thanking them for their unwitting cooperation. Then man and spider tiptoed out of the grove as softly as two shadows. As they slipped back through the veil of mist, the first golden apples of the Hesperides safely in hand, the dragon let out a long, contented sigh in its sleep, and the garden remained undisturbed and timeless behind them. Under the night sky outside the misty vale, Hercules and Anansi paused to share a look of triumph. Hercules had achieved the penultimate labor, the golden apples were his to present, and not a single creature had been harmed in the process. He gently secured the apples in his pack. "We did it," he whispered. Anansi gave a tiny cheer, dancing a little jig on Hercules' shoulder. Now only one labor remained for Hercules, a journey into the underworld to face the darkness and bring back the three-headed hound, Cerberus. But after everything they had been through, Hercules felt no fear of that final challenge. He had discovered along this journey that even the greatest darkness could be weathered with a friend's support and a calm heart. And Anansi's presence had illuminated every shadow with wit and warmth. As the two companions began their long trek back towards the lands of men, their hearts were light. Anansi still had to deliver his captured creatures to Nyame, and Hercules would have to return the apples and complete his last task. But for now, they simply walked in peaceful silence under a canopy of glittering stars. The air was cool and filled with the chirp of distant night crickets. Each step they took felt soft and sure, as if the earth itself were grateful and gentle beneath their feet. Many days later, on a gentle summer night, Hercules and Anansi sat together by a small fire for the last time before their paths diverged. The 12 labors were complete. Hercules had even faced the darkness of the underworld and emerged victorious, his soul finally free of burden, and Anansi had delivered the hornets, python, leopard and fairy to Nyame, earning the sky god's trove of stories. In fact, beside Anansi rested a beautifully carved gourd brimming with shimmering story scrolls and tale seeds, a gift from the heavens that he would scatter among the world. The two friends were quiet, basking in the glow of accomplishment and the simple joy of each other's company. Above them, the sky was clear and moonless, a tapestry of stars from horizon to horizon. The Milky Way flowed like a river of diamond dust. Hercules leaned back against a log, his lion skin cloak, for he now wore the Nemean lion's coat as a mantle of honor, draped around his broad shoulders. He gazed up at the constellations that glittered cold and beautiful. Anansi perched on a nearby stump, poking the fire with a twig to stir up little golden sparks. The crackling of the fire and the chirping of distant frogs were the only sounds. "It's a beautiful night for a story," Hercules murmured, his voice deep and soft. "You once promised to tell me a great spider story, Anansi, perhaps one from your new collection." The little Spider-Man chuckled, remembering his boast on the first night they met. "Indeed I did." He reached into the gourd of stories and, with a flourish, pulled out a single glowing thread of tale. In truth, Anansi needed no script to tell a story, but the dramatic gesture made Hercules smile. "This is a story of the sky," Anansi said, "and of friendship eternal." Hercules shifted to a comfortable position, feeling as carefree as a child at bedtime, safe and loved. Anansi began to weave a final tale. His voice floated out over the meadow, smooth and lulling, as he spoke of a brave hero and a clever spider who painted the sky with their adventures. He told of how the gods placed a mighty warrior among the stars as a constellation to shine forever as a reminder of courage, and if Hercules listened closely, he realized with humble surprise that this part was about him. Anansi also spoke of a tiny spider who spread stories across the earth so that people everywhere could feel the warmth of hope and laughter when night fell, and Hercules realized this was Anansi's own tale. As the story unfolded, Hercules felt an immense peace settle over his heart. The images Anansi conjured, of stars twinkling in familiar patterns, of families gathered around fires telling tales that would never be forgotten, were as comforting as the embers glowing before them. The great hero's eyes grew heavy. The long journey, the many trials overcome, and the gentle magic of Anansi's storytelling wrapped him in well-earned drowsiness. He watched a firefly drift lazily above, drawing a glowing curlicue in the dark, and he thought of how far they had come together. "Thank you, dear friend," Hercules whispered, not even sure if Anansi heard. The spider did hear, but Hercules could no longer catch his soft reply, for sleep was gently closing in. As Hercules' eyes fell shut, he felt as though the very stars were singing a lullaby just for him. Anansi finished his tale with a quiet flourish, noticing that Hercules was now fast asleep, a contented smile on the hero's face. The spider smiled too, a tiny, fond smile, and spun a last small web above the dozing demigod, perhaps to catch any bad dreams before they could reach him. The campfire had burned low, just a few orange coals pulsing like a heartbeat. Knowing his friend was safe and comfortable, Anansi finally allowed himself to rest as well, curling up under the brim of Hercules' shield where it was warm. All around, the night was serene and perfect. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the promise of dawn. Above the sleepers, constellations old and new shimmered. One cluster of stars looked very much like a powerful man with a club slung over his shoulder, and another, if you squinted, resembled a small spider in a web. They seemed to twinkle brighter for a moment, as if winking in companionship across the vast sky. In this way, the mighty Hercules and Anansi the Spider, two friends bound by story and deed, found their rest. Their journey had ended in success and wisdom, and now a deep, gentle sleep was their reward. The world was quiet and at peace, and their story, lovingly woven together, would live on in the hearts and dreams of all who heard it. Now our story has come to a close, and the night is deep and kind. Hercules and Anansi are peacefully asleep under the starry sky, and you too can let yourself drift into rest. Feel the gentle weight of your body sinking into your bed, and the calm of the darkness around you. The adventures have ended in comfort and friendship, and there is no more need to be awake. Take a slow, soft breath in and sigh it out. Imagine the twinkling stars above, watching over you like friendly eyes, and know that you are safe. Let go of any remaining thoughts or worries. They can float away like little clouds. Your eyelids are heavy, your mind is quiet, and your heart is light. It's time to join our heroes in sweet slumber. In this peaceful moment you are warm, you are loved, and all is well. The world around you is as gentle and sleepy as a midnight garden. So snuggle in a little deeper and allow the comfort of sleep to embrace you. May your dreams be filled with calm adventures and shining stars. Rest now, dear listener, and sleep well. Good night.